Yeah, the misconception is that eyewitness testimony is reliable, right? People just believe that. The because we believe if we were robbed or if we were raped or if somebody shot a gun at us and the person was there, we could ID that person. The fact is, eyewitness testimony or false eyewitness testimony is the number one leading cause of false convictions. In other words, more cases are reversed, that in DNA, based upon false identification. So there are four different reasons, in my view, why eyewitness testimony could be unreliable or is unreliable. The first is stress. Stress impairs the encoding of event. It just does. Memory is suggestible, right? If a police officer sits down and says, "Well, couldn't it have happened this way, or wasn't it likely that way?" It's simply being susceptible to suggestion. Cross identification or cross race identification is very difficult. Look, I don't mean to sound racist or pedantic, but the vast majority of my experience has been around people that look like me, white people. The likelihood that I'm going to misidentify an Asian or a black is significantly higher than the likelihood that I'm going to misidentify another Caucasian. It's just our life experience. And the fourth is confidence doesn't mean accuracy. In other words, that's the man, I'll never forget it. And they're absolutely confident. That doesn't translate into accuracy at all. So those are the four reasons, in my view, why eyewitness testimony is so unreliable.
Yeah, man, this is so fascinating. I mean, there's so much to kind of unpack here, as well as maybe even something you didn't talk about with these AI generated videos, right? So like people's just like what they're seeing might not even be what's going on. So
let me give you the classic example.
Yeah.
And it's happened to you, Tommy. It happened to me yesterday. You're walking in a public place. I was in the food court yesterday, and I saw a guy that I knew to be Eric Reed. I've known Eric Reed for 30 years. I see him. He's as close to you and me, and I went, "Fuck you." It was a stranger, right? And he looked at me like, "What is your problem?" And I said, "Oh my God, I am so sorry." But I have known this guy for 30 years, and it wasn't even a doppelganger when I got that close, but I'm as close to me and you, and I shot this poor stranger the bird thinking it was my buddy, and it was a complete stranger. That's happened to you at a mall. That's happened to you at a gas station, and people go to prison based upon those same misidentifications. I mean, it's a real problem.
Yeah. I mean, the cross race identification is so interesting because people do just chalk it as racism, but it is very hard when you're unfamiliar with, a group of people maybe that you just don't spend time with. I've seen it happen so often. So is this something that actually translates into like eyewitness testimony?
Oh yeah, the data shows absolutely there's a much higher misidentification in cross-cultural situations than others. And again, our memory is suggestible, right? If even the most well-intended law enforcement officer sits down, he can make suggestions that affect your recall, leading questions, suggestive questions, and so forth. And let's step back. In most eyewitness identification cases, it's an incredibly stressful event, right? Somebody's pointing a gun at you. Somebody is raping you or trying to rape. Somebody has broken into your house at 3 o'clock in the morning. Under a high-stress situation, your brain triggers psychological responses that can interfere with the encoding or your accurate memory of it. You're looking at the gun, right? You're not looking at the face. You're looking at the the phone cord that he's tying. I mean, your brain cannot process accurately or as accurately in a high-stress situation as it can in a non-high-stress situation. Your whole fight or flight reflex kicks in. All that triggers inaccurate responses.
And you're saying that people often, or it's common that a defendant will falsely be imprisoned because of an eyewitness testimony. Is that because the jury puts a lot of weight into the eyewitness testimony?
100%.
Okay.
100%. A jury believes when a witness says, "That's the man, I'll never forget that face," that's all they need to hear most of the time, right? They don't need DNA. They don't need, fingerprints. They don't need, "I'll never forget that face. I'll never forget." The people instinctively believe that testimony is accurate. What could be more accurate than eyewitness identification? Just about everything can be more accurate than eyewitness identification.
Have you seen an evolution in the courtroom where the weight of the eyewitness testimony has maybe gone down or something?
I have seen the evolution of two things. One, experts that can opine upon the difficulties of eyewitness identification, and two, the development of better cross-examination on that issue. I mean, when I was a baby lawyer, it's like, "Well, you say my client did it, right? Yeah. Well, you're under oath, right? You got to tell the truth." It was a little beyond that, but not much.
Yeah.
And now we've been taught as criminal defense lawyers to voir dire on that, right? To talk about it in jury selection, to talk about it in opening statement, to expose the jury to the reality of the fact that it can be so misleading and there can be so much misidentification.
Has your instinct or your compass internally been able to help understand if the person is telling the truth or not? Are you
Sure. Yeah, and look, every lawyer is different. Every lawyer has skills in some areas and lesser or greater skills than in other areas. But sometimes the idea in a misidentification situation is to almost befriend the witness, right? Not to attack them, not to try to impeach them, but just to say, "Look, it's like that scene from My Cousin Vinny, right? He wasn't attacking; he was explaining through the tree leaves and through the dusty window and all of that. You almost need to reach out and explain why they think they are right, even though clearly they are not right."
During eyewitness testimony, or maybe just in other aspects of a trial, can you bring in a person who's like a lie detector profession and just get them hooked up and sort of go through questions?
No, you can't. A lie detector is not admissible in just about any venue I'm aware of. You can, of course, use polygraphs or lie detectors to try to get a case dismissed or in a grand jury presentation or what have you. But I don't know any judge that's going to let you bring in a polygraph and have it admissible. I did have fun once upon a time, and this has been 4 or 5 years ago. I had a lawyer who was accused of a crime that he did not commit, and there happened to be another lawyer in the courthouse who looked very much like my lawyer, right? So as a stunt, I had the lawyer that I didn't represent sit on the first row, and I had the prosecutor bring in the complainant and ask the complainant, look around the courtroom, my defendant wasn't there, and see if the guy that you claim did this is there. And sure enough, she misidentified the lawyer, the lawyer stand-in, and not my client who was good for it. And the prosecutor was gracious enough to dismiss the case.
Wait, so that's like a movie moment, because I feel like that's like a Perry Mason moment or something. So you had your client, you had a person that was impersonating your client sit next to you in the desk? And
No, he so happened to be there, right? Or did you bring him there?
I knew this lawyer, and it's like, dude, that looks exactly like my client. So let's just call the lawyer John Smith. So I said, "Hey, John, where are you going to be on Thursday?" "I'm going to be on, in the 178th. "Okay, if I text you at 9:15, can you come by the 248th and sit in as my stand-in and see if the complainant will misidentify you?" He goes, "Sure, come on, I'll do that." And so I didn't have and I told the prosecutor, I was straight up about it. I said, my client's not going to be in the courtroom, right? I didn't, get tricky with him. I said, but I'm going to have somebody that's not him. He knew the lawyer too, and he goes, "Sure, let's try that out." And sure enough, the complainant came in and said, "That's him, that's him." I got the dismissal, 30 minutes later.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not brilliant lawyer, and it's dumb luck, right? But the point is made that even the most well-intended person can misidentify someone.
No, that's a great example. And It is brilliant in a way. I mean, it's putting those pieces together and actually executing on a plan like that, and for it to actually end in a result that you were hoping is pretty cool.
Before you said one thing that I wanted to touch back on the lie detectors. You said it's not admissible, but you can get a case dismissed. Can you talk about what the difference is?
Yeah, sure. So admissible in court means a jury's going to hear it, right, and a jury's going to evaluate it. There's not any jurisdiction that I'm aware of that will let the polygraph into evidence before a jury. However, if you hire a good polygrapher, and polygraphers are just like lawyers, just like doctors, just like whatever. There's some reliable ones, some honest ones, and there's some bullshit ones out there. But if you hire a competent, qualified polygrapher, usually somebody who'd worked for the DEA, who worked for the FBI, that's got actual skins on the wall, and you put your client on the polygraph and he or she passes the polygraph, most prosecutors will consider that in determining whether or not they want to go forward on the case, right? If you hire some hooker that will say, I'm Oswald and I shot Kennedy, and I passed the polygraph that I'm Oswald and I shot Kennedy, they're not going to give a shit about it. But they're used frequently, Tommy, in discussions with the prosecutor, and sometimes in grand jury packets, meaning you do not have many rights in front of a grand jury. In fact, you hardly have any rights at all. But if the prosecutor is kind of on the fence as to whether or not they want to ask a grand jury to indict your client, you can put together what's called a grand jury packet and explain to the grand jury why you don't believe your client should be prosecuted. A good tool, or a good tool in that toolbox, is that your client passed a polygraph, and that the grand jury can be asked to consider that polygraph.
Have you ever taken a lie detector test?
I have.
And how was that experience?
It was interesting. It involved a personal experience of mine for unrelated reasons that I'm not necessarily going to go into. Relationship reasons, let's just say, and I passed.
So it was a serious. It wasn't like for fun. You did it.
No,
like,
I did it.
It was like a serious. It
Well,
was an ultimatum.
Are
on
there
the table.
clothes on, or are there clothes off in this game?
Well, it was did I or didn't I, and I had maintained for some time that I didn't, and my polygrapher said he didn't. So the allegation involved clothes coming off. But
Wait, so are they easily manipulated? Can people manipulate them?
sure.
Yeah.
Well, how easy they are to manipulate. You can Google it and say, if you squeeze your butt cheeks together and do all this kind of stuff, it'll affect it. I think. Look, the reality is, Aaron, I think there's some true sociopaths out there that could pass any polygraph, right? There's some Ted Bundys of the world or whatever that could pass any polygraph no matter what. Most people who are within the, sort of the normal bell curve of humans, I think it's hard to fake one with a good polygrapher.
It'd be fun. It'd be fun to record you.
So
I
you
did it once. I did.
You passed yours.
I did.
Okay,
Thank God.
okay.
So he's not on the bell curve. This guy's crazy.
Yeah.
Cool.
How long did you practice before?
I didn't squeeze my butt cheeks for that or any other occasion.